What if the biggest reason most people never become wealthy has nothing to do with how much they earn, but with the way they think? Every day, millions of people work harder, chase bigger paychecks, and wait for the perfect opportunity. Yet they unknowingly make the same small decisions that keep them trapped in the same financial life year after year. The surprising part is that the people who build extraordinary wealth often don't have better luck. They simply see the world through a completely different lens. And once you understand that lens, you'll never look at money, success, or opportunity the same way again. Throughout this journey, you'll discover the quiet principles that transform ordinary beginnings into extraordinary results. Why the habits that look boring today often create unbelievable outcomes tomorrow, and why the choices most people ignore become the very foundation of lasting success. But here's what makes this different from the advice you've heard before. These ideas aren't about getting rich fast. They're about becoming the kind of person who naturally creates wealth, protects it, and keeps growing it for decades. As each chapter unfolds, you'll notice that every lesson connects to the next, revealing a pattern that most people never recognize until it's too late. And while every insight matters, the final chapter contains the single mindset shift that quietly separates those who build fortunes from those who spend their entire lives chasing them. If that realization changes the way you think, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment with the lesson that challenged your perspective the most. Share this video with someone who's serious about changing their financial future, and subscribe because the next lesson may completely change how you measure success. Now, let's uncover the first principle that makes an impossible journey from zero to billions feel almost inevitable. Chapter 1. The mindset that turns small beginnings into extraordinary wealth. Imagine two people standing at exactly the same starting line. They have similar jobs, similar salaries, similar opportunities. 10 years later, one is still worrying about bills, while the other has built real financial freedom. What changed? Most people would say it was luck, but luck is often the easiest explanation for a process they never noticed. The real difference begins much earlier. It begins with the way each person thinks. The average person sees money as something to earn. The extraordinary thinker sees money as something to grow. At first, that difference sounds small, almost invisible. But over time, it changes every decision. Picture a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't dig them up every morning to see if they're growing. He understands that growth happens quietly. Wealth works the same way. Yet most people never give their financial seeds enough time to become a forest. Instead, they chase quick rewards. They jump from one opportunity to another. They believe the next shortcut will finally change everything. But shortcuts often create circles, not progress. Now ask yourself a difficult question. When you receive extra money, what is your first instinct? To spend it, to celebrate it, or to put it to work? That single decision reveals more about your future than your current income ever could. Because income alone doesn't create wealth. Behavior does. This is where psychology quietly takes over. Our brains are designed to value immediate pleasure more than future rewards. Buying something today feels exciting. Waiting years for a larger reward feels uncomfortable. That's why so many people choose satisfaction now instead of freedom later. They aren't making financial decisions. They're making emotional ones. The people who eventually build extraordinary wealth learn to reverse this pattern. They train themselves to ask a different question. Not, how much can I make today? But, how can today's decision continue working long after I've forgotten about it? That shift changes everything. Because wealth rarely arrives in dramatic moments. It grows through ordinary decisions repeated with extraordinary consistency. One choice, then another, then another. Each one seems insignificant by itself, but together, they create a life that looks impossible to everyone watching from the outside. Here's the irony. The habits that appear slow are often the fastest path to lasting success. While everyone else is chasing excitement, disciplined thinkers are quietly building momentum. And momentum is powerful. Once it starts, every smart decision makes the next one easier. Every investment strengthens the next investment. Every lesson improves the next decision. Eventually, success no longer feels like luck. It feels inevitable. But this mindset alone isn't enough. Because even people who think differently often lose their advantage by making one critical mistake. A mistake that looks completely harmless. Until it quietly steals years of potential growth. And that's exactly where the next chapter begins. Chapter 2. Why most people chase money, while the wealthy buy time. Think about the last time you said, "I don't have enough time." Now ask yourself something even deeper. What if the problem was never time at all? What if it was the way you were trading it? Most people believe wealth is measured by how much money sits in a bank account. But that's only the surface. The real currency of life has always been time. Money can disappear and come back. Time never does. Every hour you spend today is gone forever. Yet most people exchange their best hours for a paycheck without ever asking a more important question. What happens when I stop working? For many, the answer is uncomfortable. The income stops. The pressure begins. That's because they built a life that depends entirely on their presence. Imagine carrying buckets of water from a river every single day. As long as you keep walking, your family has water. The moment you stop, everything stops. Now imagine spending that same energy building a pipeline instead. It takes longer, it feels harder, and in the beginning, it even looks slower. But one day, water flows without carrying another bucket. That is the difference between earning money and building systems that continue creating value over time. The wealthy understand this long before they become wealthy. They don't simply ask, "How much will this pay me?" They ask, "Will this still create value 5 years from now?" That question changes every decision. Psychology explains why this is so difficult. Our brains are wired to chase immediate rewards. A paycheck feels safe because it's predictable. Long-term investments, learning new skills, or building assets often feel uncertain. And uncertainty makes most people uncomfortable. So they stay busy. They confuse movement with progress. They fill every hour with work, but never create anything that works for them. The result is a cycle that quietly repeats year after year. More effort, more stress, more hours, but not necessarily more freedom. The people who eventually break that cycle begin protecting their time as carefully as they protect their money. They invest in knowledge that keeps paying them back. They develop skills that become more valuable with experience. They build assets that continue producing results long after the original work is finished. Slowly, something remarkable happens. Time stops feeling like an enemy. It becomes an ally. Every year, the gap between effort and reward grows wider. Not because they suddenly work harder, but because yesterday's decisions continue working today. That's the hidden advantage most people never notice. Real wealth isn't about escaping work. It's about making your work matter long after you've completed it. And once you understand that, your priorities begin to change. You stop asking how to earn more this month. You start asking how to create something that keeps growing for decades. But even with the right priorities, one invisible force can destroy years of progress. It isn't a market crash. It isn't bad luck. It's something far more ordinary and far more dangerous. Because the next chapter reveals the quiet power that turns small decisions into extraordinary fortunes or quietly destroys them. Chapter 3. The quiet power of decisions that multiply for decades. Imagine standing at the top of a mountain. You have two paths in front of you. At first glance, they look almost identical. One turns slightly to the left, the other only a few inches to the right. The difference seems too small to matter, but keep walking for miles, and those two paths lead to completely different destinations. Life works the same way. Extraordinary wealth is rarely built through one massive decision. It is built through thousands of tiny decisions that quietly multiply over time. This is where most people get distracted. They spend their energy searching for the next big breakthrough, the perfect investment, the perfect business, the perfect opportunity. But while they're waiting for one life-changing moment, they overlook the small choices that shape every single day. Think about it. Reading 10 pages instead of scrolling for 30 minutes. Saving a small percentage of every paycheck instead of spending it all. Learning one new skill instead of watching another hour of entertainment. None of these decisions feel dramatic. In fact, they often feel insignificant. That's exactly why people underestimate them. The human mind loves visible results. We want proof that our effort is paying off. When we don't see immediate progress, we begin to doubt the process. We quit too early. We change direction too often. We mistake slow growth for no growth. But nature teaches a very different lesson. Picture a giant oak tree. For years, it appears to grow slowly. Most of its energy is invisible, strengthening its roots beneath the ground. Then one day, it stands so tall that people admire its strength. They notice the tree. They never notice the years spent building the foundation. Financial success follows the same pattern. The strongest results are usually invisible in the beginning. Every wise decision adds another root. Every disciplined habit makes the foundation stronger. Eventually, growth accelerates. Not because the rules changed, but because consistency finally had enough time to reveal its power. This is why disciplined people often look ordinary for a long time. Then, almost overnight, they appear successful. To outsiders, it feels sudden. To them, it feels earned. Because they understand a truth that most people ignore. Your future is not shaped by what you do once, it is shaped by what you repeat. Every repeated action casts a vote for the person you're becoming. Repeat patience, and you become patient. Repeat discipline, and discipline becomes your identity. Repeat thoughtful decisions, and thoughtful decisions become your lifestyle. Over time, your habits stop feeling like effort. They become automatic. And when that happens, success no longer depends on motivation. It depends on identity. That is the quiet force behind every lasting fortune. Not genius, not luck, not perfect timing, just ordinary choices repeated with extraordinary consistency. But even after mastering this principle, one final challenge remains. Because building wealth is one thing, keeping your emotions from destroying it is something entirely different. And that lesson changes everything. Chapter 4. How patience becomes your greatest financial advantage. What if the greatest advantage in building wealth isn't intelligence, or talent, or even finding the perfect opportunity? What if it's simply the ability to wait when everyone else feels the need to act? That sounds almost too simple. Yet history has shown, again and again, that impatience quietly destroys more wealth than bad decisions ever do. Picture a fisherman standing beside a calm lake. Every few seconds, he pulls his line out of the water, convinced the fish aren't coming. Another fisherman casts his line once, stays focused, and allows time to do its work. Hours later, only one of them returns home with a catch. The difference wasn't skill. It was patience. The financial world works much the same way. Most people believe success comes from constantly doing something. Buying, selling, switching, reacting, chasing the latest trend. It feels productive. It feels exciting. But excitement and progress are rarely the same thing. Our brains are wired to believe that action creates control. When markets rise, we feel unstoppable. When they fall, fear whispers that we must do something immediately. So we react. Not because the facts changed, but because our emotions did. And emotions are terrible financial advisors. The people who build lasting wealth understand a difficult truth. Not every moment requires a decision. Sometimes the smartest move is protecting the decisions you've already made. Imagine planting an orchard. You wouldn't dig up every tree each month to check if the roots are growing. You water it. You care for it. Then you allow time to finish the job. The same principle applies to nearly every meaningful investment in life. Knowledge, relationships, skills, businesses, and wealth. None of them reward constant interference. They reward consistent care. This is why patience is so powerful. It protects you from becoming your own biggest obstacle. Think about the biggest mistakes people make with money. Buying because everyone else is buying. Selling because everyone else is panicking. Changing direction every time a new trend appears. Each decision feels reasonable in the moment, but together they quietly steal years of progress. Patient people see these moments differently. They understand that temporary noise should never replace long-term thinking. While others are controlled by headlines, they stay focused on principles. While others chase certainty, they accept that uncertainty is part of every worthwhile journey. That mindset creates something incredibly valuable: peace. Not because nothing goes wrong, but because they stop expecting the path to be perfectly smooth. They know storms pass. They know fear fades. They know disciplined decisions usually outlast emotional reactions. And over time, that calm becomes a competitive advantage. Because while the crowd keeps starting over, patient people keep moving forward, slowly, quietly, consistently. Eventually, the results become impossible to ignore. But there is one final lesson that ties every principle together. A lesson that goes beyond money itself. Because the greatest fortune you'll ever build isn't measured only by what you own. It's measured by the person you become while building it. Chapter 5. Building a fortune that outlives you. Imagine reaching the end of your life with more money than you ever dreamed of. Now imagine looking back and realizing that wealth was never the greatest achievement. The person you became was. That is the lesson most people discover too late. They spend years chasing bigger numbers, believing that one more paycheck, one more investment, or one more success will finally bring lasting satisfaction. But wealth, by itself, has never guaranteed a meaningful life. Money is a powerful tool. It can create freedom. It can create opportunity. It can even create security. But it cannot replace character. And without character, even great fortunes have a way of disappearing. Think of someone building a magnificent house. They choose the finest materials, the best architects, the most beautiful design. But if the foundation is weak, time will eventually expose every hidden crack. A fortune works exactly the same way. Its true foundation isn't made of dollars. It's made of habits, discipline, integrity, patience, humility. These qualities are invisible at first, yet they quietly support everything else. This is why truly successful people never stop learning. They know that the greatest investment isn't always in markets or businesses. Sometimes it's in themselves. Every book they read, every mistake they honestly examine, every skill they patiently develop. Each one increases something no market crash can ever take away: their ability to think, to adapt, to make wiser decisions. That becomes their greatest asset. There's another truth that separates lasting wealth from temporary success. The richest life isn't built by asking, "What can I get?" It's built by asking, "What value can I create?" People who solve meaningful problems create meaningful opportunities. People who improve the lives of others often improve their own in the process. Success becomes a byproduct, not the destination. And perhaps that's the biggest mindset shift of all. When you stop chasing money alone, you begin building something much greater: a reputation, a legacy, a life that continues creating value long after you're gone. Because real wealth isn't measured only by the size of your bank account. It's measured by the number of lives you've positively influenced, the wisdom you've passed on, and the opportunities you've created for others. In the end, every principle we've explored leads back to one simple truth: think differently, act patiently, stay disciplined, make decisions that your future self will thank you for, day after day, year after year. That's how ordinary beginnings become extraordinary outcomes. Not through luck, not through shortcuts, but through a mindset that refuses to sacrifice tomorrow for today's distractions. So as you leave this video, ask yourself one question. What is one small decision you can make today that your future self will still be grateful for 10 years from now? If this journey challenged the way you think, let us know in the comments. Share this video with someone who believes success is only about working harder, and subscribe for more ideas that don't just change the way you earn, they change the way you think. Because when your mindset changes, your future quietly begins to change with it.